So the 2024 Gran Turismo World Series is underway as of right now, guys, and it's kicked into life very, very suddenly. It didn't seem 5 minutes ago that it was announced, really, did it, to be honest with you? But they've brought a lot to the table this year, haven't they?
Yes, I mean, there's been some controversy around it. There was a lot of reaction from some of the bigger named drivers on social media for the format for this year. Um, and there's probably a couple of points that the most significant is that each of the two championships only has 6 races to qualify
Mm-hmm.
for all of the live events this year. There's only going to be 12 finalists in the Nations Cup, which is, I mean, less than half of what it was before. I mean, there's a lot of the big name drivers who are kind of a little bit cross that they're not necessarily going to get the chance to go to the live events, and then they're going to be missing out on seeing their friends and the Gran Turismo family for a year. But yeah, it's. I mean, we're 3 races in already. There's 3 races left to go in the nations qualifying. The manufacturers kicks off immediately after that. We've got the Toyota Gazoo Racing that starts fairly shortly, as at the time of this recording. So yeah, it's going to be a busy old time, especially with those live events, some of which are breaking new ground.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to a part of the world that they've not really delved into before, Jordan, going to Abu Dhabi. But you know that
Possibly.
when you go when you go there, it's going to be, well, it's going to be massive, isn't it? You know, they're not going to. There's going to be no expense spared. It's going to be a hell of an event, that, isn't it?
Yeah, that was quite a surprise when I saw that. I mean, well, I had a clue that it was going to be there earlier, but I was still surprised because that's I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's a glamorous destination. It's got
Yeah.
a real motorsport connection. I think a lot of people are going to assume that the circuit there is going to be Yas Marina is going to be included in the game. But I mean, we didn't get Monaco either. Didn't get Monte Carlo either, and we had the finals there for quite a few years. But it's exciting. I think Barcelona was great, but these sort of glamorous destinations for the World Finals, I think, makes even more sense. I'm sure there's a lot of great venues where they could host these, and Prague also is a very interesting choice for a World Series event. I didn't see that one coming, and I will say that having the Skoda announcement in Prague and then having a World Series event in Prague a few months later was kind of interesting. I thought they might sort of tie those announcements together, but maybe we'll see more Skodas at Prague for the World Series event. But that's exciting. And return to North America as well with the Montreal event.
And that's setting tongues wagging about whether Montreal is a circuit that's coming to the game as well.
Right.
I mean, three entirely new venues for this year. If the Abu Dhabi thing does come true, and we have no reason to suspect that it won't, some little slip up from some of the regional sites on that one. But yeah, I mean, I'm tremendously looking forward to the European final in Prague, which unfortunately I've never had the chance to go myself, but I understand it's a beautiful city. I think the Asian final is obviously in Tokyo, and then the North American final in Montreal, and potentially the World final in Abu Dhabi. It looks like it's going to be a cracking year for the live events.
Definitely will be, and the Toyota Gazoo series as well. Let's come back with it once again. You know, they're not mucking about once more this year, though. Didn't I see a Prius on some of the announcements, gentlemen?
Yes, you did. Yeah, there's a race that involves the Prius. That's going to be. It's going to be different. I mean, I've always enjoyed driving the slower hybrid cars in racing events, and it was as a staple of our lands that we held back in the GT4 era. So it's going to be relatively interesting because it's all about preservation of momentum and keeping up, and it's going to be fun.
I was going to say Tom Brooks is now a Formula E commentator, so he's got at least experience of commentating on those sorts of electric vehicles aside from doing Priuses. It might feel a little bit dull in comparison for him. We'll have to ask him. But still, you know, it's an interesting angle, isn't it, though, Jordan? You know, we've spoken before about how Gran Turismo has cars of so many types. It covers so many corners of the automotive world. It's just another great way for them to sort of show it off as an exhibition, isn't it?
Yeah, and, you know, to see a big brand like Toyota involved, that's fantastic. And it's, The World Series, I'm glad that it's still chugging along. That's great. It's also worth noting that we have a return to the individual format
Yeah.
for nations.
Yes.
And that's a big change. It was quite controversial last year. Spain, of course, brought that championship home on home soil in Barcelona. And I think that's a good move because having these individual champions is important. I know
Definitely.
For Andrew and I, as we try to cover these events and cover these as sporting events, it's a bit easier when you have these individuals winning and competing as individuals because it makes it easier to follow. And I think from a fan perspective or from someone who's following the series, you need to have that continuity and you need to have that familiarity with the participants. So it's a bit unfortunate that the field has been reduced a little bit, but I think it was a wise move to go back to that individual format for nations.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, you're right in the fact that you follow these characters through a championship and through a series, and it's something we're used to in motorsport. You'll always focus on the driver, and then the team is the sort of the secondary information. Usually, in some forms of motorsport, obviously endurance racing, maybe not, but you find it easier as a spectator to sort of form that attachment to them as well, as opposed to the machines, and obviously in this sense, the virtual machines in the cars themselves. So I think it's a very, very strong point that we need to have an individuals competition and a teams one. And it makes them both seem more important in their own ways as well, because it just draws that line between them a little bit and adds that sort of significance to the achievement, doesn't it?
Yeah. And, you have these top drivers and they can change manufacturer from year to year. So you don't know, you say, oh, wow, look who Fraga is driving for this year or something like that. You can have them change that. They're probably not going to be changing their country very often. So that's something that's not going to likely change. So we can see who the top driver is in a country by how they perform in nations. But when they can change between different manufacturers and see how they work together with other drivers, partnering up with other strong drivers from other countries and manufacturers, I think it just makes a lot more sense from a competition standpoint. It makes it a bit more entertaining to see them jump around between the different teams.
And also, speaking of manufacturers, Andrew, obviously we have to think about balance of performance when it comes to the manufacturers as well, which adds that extra diversity to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and obviously with the manufacturer series is very, the top level is entirely focused on the Group 3 cars, and getting the balance of performance right is key. And I know that they've been making very, very big changes to that this year. There was a big change, I think, back in February, which just wildly changed the balance of power across Group 3. There's been another change actually with the 1.46 update that we had earlier this week. With manufacturers, I think is 10 days away at the time of this recording. So it's all changed again, and people are now selecting their manufacturers, and we could see a different lineup in the finals this year.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. There's so many angles to it, isn't there, Jordan? It's always exciting because even with a virtual event like this, away from other sim racing championships and events that I'm sure we've all seen before, there's that real world build up to it as well, isn't there? There is genuine excitement around who's going to go where and who's going to do what for the season ahead. Yeah,
and the balance of performance is a bit of a wild card. It sort of throws a sense of randomness into the whole competition. But these live events are really important, and there is a Gran Turismo family that Andrew mentioned earlier, and a lot of the top drivers are upset they're not going to be part of that. And you need that sense of community and realness. I think you got to have the real interviews and the live reactions to make this series entertaining to watch. You can't just do virtual stuff. So I'm glad to see it back. I think they're really going to put more into it as the year goes on, and I'm excited to see what happens this year.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously when the live events come around, we'll do our very best to bring you all the info as it comes on GT Planet, and I'm certainly excited for it all to get underway. And well, we'll just have to see who's there at Abu Dhabi at the end of it all for the finals, I guess.